All right, let's get one thing straight. A college degree is not a magical brain-enhancing elixir. If it were, every person with a PhD would be a billionaire genius saving the world instead of, well, tweeting about how nobody appreciates their dissertation on the socioeconomic impact of medieval goat farming. But somewhere along the way, society collectively decided that a framed piece of paper equals intelligence. That if you don't have one, you're clearly some caveman grunting your way through life, and if you do, well, congratulations. You're now an unquestionable expert in all things, including subjects you never even studied. Let's break this down. Let's be real. Some professions absolutely need a degree. I don't care how many TED Talks you've watched or how many hustle books you've read. If you're cutting me open on an operating table, I need to know you didn't learn your craft from a DIY surgery YouTube channel. Doctors, certified please. We enjoy the luxury of not dying from someone who thinks Grey's Anatomy is an acceptable substitute for medical school. Would you trust a guy who just has a passion for medicine to perform your open heart surgery? No, exactly. Engineers? Oh, for sure. I'd like to confidently drive over a bridge without wondering if the guy who designed it just figured it out along the way from some Reddit forum. Structural integrity is a big deal, folks. Lawyers, yeah, kind of important. You can't just walk into a courtroom, throw on a suit, and start yelling objection like it's an episode of Suits. You need to know the law, how to argue it, and most importantly, how to not get your client thrown in jail because you thought vibes were a solid defense strategy. But here's the thing, not every job requires a degree. Let's look at history's most famous college dropouts. Steve Jobs left school and built Apple because apparently college was slowing him down. Elon Musk dropped out of his PhD program, and, well, now he's launching cars into space. Mark Zuckerberg left Harvard to create Facebook, proving that you don't need a degree to invent a website that ruins Thanksgiving dinners with political debates. And let's not forget the creatives. Picasso never had to flash a diploma to sell a painting for millions. Quentin Tarantino didn't go to film school, but somehow figured out how to make pulp fiction. Oprah dropped out and still ended up being, well, Oprah. Then there's the internet era, where people are literally making millions doing things that never required a degree. Influencers? Nope. YouTubers? Definitely not. Podcasters? Not unless there's a degree in talking into a microphone for an hour and getting paid for it. Gamers? Yeah, try telling Ninja he needs a diploma to play Fortnite professionally. And yet, society still pushes the narrative that without a degree, you're doomed to failure, which is pretty rich considering some of the wealthiest, most successful people in the world never finished college. So, while some careers absolutely require a degree, because again, we do not want uncertified surgeons, the idea that everyone needs one to be successful? That's just a well-marketed myth sold by institutions that profit off your tuition. Bottom line, if a degree is essential for your dream job, go get it. But if you're just following the herd because society said so, maybe, just maybe, there's another path that won't leave you drowning in student debt. Now, let's talk about the other side. The people who wear their street smarts like a badge of honor. Ah yes, the I don't need no fancy degree, I have common sense crowd. These are the same people who think their gut feeling is just as valid as, actual expertise. Look, common sense is great. It tells you not to stick a fork in an electrical outlet. It helps you realize that touching a hot stove is a bad idea. But here's the thing. Common sense is not a replacement for specialized knowledge. Just because you successfully change your car's oil does not mean you're now a mechanical engineer. The biggest offenders? The Facebook scientists? You know the ones. The people who skipped biology class but suddenly have serious questions about vaccines. The ones who did their own research, translation, watched a 5-minute YouTube conspiracy video, and now think they know more than epidemiologists who spent decades studying infectious diseases. It's fascinating, really. And let's not forget the armchair lawyers. People who binge-watched Law and Order and now think they could win a Supreme Court case. You can't arrest me, I don't consent. Oh, really? Let me know how that works out for you when you're in handcuffs. Or the self-proclaimed financial experts who read one self-help book and now think they're Warren Buffett. You just have to stop buying coffee and you'll be a millionaire. Sure, Chad, let me just survive on tap water and manifest wealth. But here's the problem, a little knowledge is dangerous. It gives people false confidence, the Dunning-Kruger effect in full force. The less they know, the more convinced they are that they know everything. They reject experts, dismiss science, and live in a world where feelings trump facts. And yet, somehow, they always have the most opinions. These are the same people who proudly say, school teaches you nothing useful, while struggling to calculate a 15% tip. The ones who think reading a Wikipedia article is the same as getting a degree. The ones who believe they're too smart to fall for misinformation but will share an article titled, 5G towers are controlling your brain, without even checking the source. So let's set the record straight. Education matters. Formal or informal, real learning requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to be wrong sometimes. There's nothing wrong with not having a degree, but acting like expertise is useless just because you have common sense. That's just ignorance with extra confidence. So dear Facebook scientists, armchair lawyers, and Twitter economists, maybe, just maybe, the people who dedicated their lives to a subject might actually know more than you. Shocking, I know. Then we have the universities themselves. The so-called temples of wisdom, the gatekeepers of success, the sacred halls of higher learning, or, really expensive businesses with a great PR team. Let's not kid ourselves. Universities are not some noble institutions purely devoted to the pursuit of knowledge. They are for-profit machines cleverly disguised as educational sanctuaries. Want proof? Just take a look at the price tag. Tuition has been skyrocketing for decades, far outpacing inflation. Why? Because they can. Because society has drilled into us that without a degree, you'll be flipping burgers until the end of time. So what do? Charge insane amounts for something they've convinced you is a necessity. It's basically a legal version of a hostage situation. And what exactly are you paying for? A 4-year scavenger hunt for useful knowledge. You'll sit through an introduction to interpretative dance class because it's a required elective. But when it comes to actual life skills, oh no, we don't have time for that. How to do your taxes? Nope. How to negotiate a salary? Not covered. How to avoid signing your soul away to a terrible mortgage? Good luck figuring that out. But hey, at least you'll graduate knowing the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Super useful when you're trying to navigate health insurance policies or start a business. And let's talk about textbooks, because if there was ever a perfect example of how universities prioritize profit over education, it's the textbook industry. Nothing says we care about students like forcing them to buy a $300 book that will be obsolete in 6 months because the professor conveniently wrote a new edition where they changed 2 words and moved the page numbers around. Genius. Then there are college rankings, which are basically a pissing contest to see which school can spend the most money on fancy buildings, sports teams, and unnecessary amenities. The amount of funding that goes into football stadiums instead of academic resources is honestly mind-blowing. But sure, let's raise tuition again so we can install a rock climbing wall in the gym. And don't even get me started on degrees that cost more than they will ever earn you back. A master's in medieval pottery studies? Fantastic. You'll be swimming in job offers. Meanwhile, student loan debt is crippling an entire generation. But do universities care? Nope, they already got their money. Whether you actually land a job afterward? Not their problem. So to summarize, universities are not just about education. They are businesses first and educational institutions second. They thrive on convincing you that without them, you're nothing. That taking out massive loans is an investment in your future. That paying 6 figures for a piece of paper is completely normal. Are some degrees worth it? Absolutely. But before you go into lifetime debt, ask yourself, am I paying for an education? Or am I just funding the next football stadium? So where does that leave us? With one simple truth, a degree can be valuable, but it is not the sole measure of intelligence, success, or capability. The real key? Never stop learning. Whether it's through college, online self-education experience, or even just Googling stuff at 2 a.m., question everything. Stay curious. And for the love of everything, don't assume a diploma makes you Einstein. Now, before you go, flex that big brain of yours, smash that like button, comment, and subscribe to the Debunkers for more myth-busting madness. Because remember, just because it's common knowledge doesn't mean it's true.